How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
So yeah, I did some looking around. There's like 400 devices just with LAPD and 200 or some with New York. And nationally, they're saying there are about 1,000 at least that are currently in custody that they want opened.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Hello and welcome to Device Squad, the Propellix Enterprise Mobility Podcast. Device Squad, fighting crimes against enterprise mobility around the world. Bad UI, frustrating user experiences, poorly conceived mobile strategies. We defeat them all. With me today, we have Nitin Bhatia, mobile strategist, and Glenn Gruber, also a mobile strategist with Propellix. This is an update on our earlier podcast from a couple of weeks ago that talked about the situation between Apple and the FBI. As you'll recall, Apple rejected a judge's order to help the FBI hack into the iPhone of one of the San Bernardino shooters, calling the action, quote, an overreach by the U.S. government. The FBI has now suddenly dropped its case against Apple, claiming that they were able to successfully break into the phone themselves through the use of a third party that they will not identify. And then this story came out that the FBI wants Apple to crack into an iPhone belonging to a Boston gang member. So, guys, what do you think? Right off the bat, I'm a ultra skeptical guy. So, do we actually believe the FBI when they say that they were able to break into the phone? Is there any reason why they would lie?
There's always a reason why they would lie. There's a reason why everybody lies. But I think that you can say that they might do that to save face, but I don't think that that's really what happened here. I think it's been rumored for about a week that the FBI was working with a company called Cellebrite out of Israel, who had previously has been doing work in support of the FBI to help crack through this iPhone in question. And I suspect that that's actually what happened, which was probably a good outcome overall, from their perspective, because maybe they were able to get into the phone as they desired, but they were probably unlikely to win the case just based on at least some of the commentary that I had seen. This is probably mostly just kicking the can down the road. I suspect that there's going to be other opportunities to bring a similar case to bear. So I think that this is not the end by any stretch. This is this battle is over, but the war is just beginning, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, this has been on the government's agenda for years. And I think, I'm not sure why they chose this particular case, but, to me, it sounded like the FBI had a way to tap into the public sentiment so that they could get enough of a backing to be able to do that, because there really wasn't a case. It was more around public sentiment on how people feel about national security, how people feel about terrorism and stuff like that. So I think they chose this particular case to kind of set precedents on how they plan to force companies to get around encryption or get the information that they're not able to get to. Because, I mean, it just sounds silly that the FBI was forcing Apple when there are hundreds of other ways to be able to get into the device and get the information that they need.
You think FBI was waiting for like a high profile case that involved, international terrorism versus
Absolutely.
just a gang member in Boston?
Yeah, exactly.
All we heard about was FBI going right to Apple for the exploit, but we didn't seem to hear anything about the FBI possibly trying to find an answer among other government agencies. I don't know if you guys ever found anything about that.
Yeah, there's actually quite a bit about that. For one, there was a number of people in the counterterrorism and intelligence sectors that kind of came out against the FBI and supported Apple. One was Richard Clark, who was head the counterterrorism chief for Bush just before 9/11. He recently came out strongly against the Justice Department and the FBI in this one. And a couple of really good quotes from him were, if I were in the job now, I would have simply told the FBI to call Fort Meade, the headquarters of the NSA, and they would have solved this problem for him. But they're not as interested in solving this problem as they are in getting legal precedent. And he further went on to say that every expert I know believes that NSA could crack this phone. They want precedent that the government can compel a computer device manufacturer to allow the government in. So that is kind of pretty damning. And there was another quote, some commentary from retired General Michael Hayden, who was the former head of both the NSA and CIA, who also felt that they were going a little bit in the wrong direction. Mostly because he felt that encryption is important, to the security, of government systems as well as to individuals. He actually was hoping that there would be a little bit more of a balance, as well. I actually have a quick quote from him here. When you step back and look at the whole question of American security and safety writ large, we're a safer, more secure nation without backdoors, he says. With them, a lot of other people, quote unquote, the bad guys, would take advantage of it. So, I think that here are two guys who clearly know all about intelligence and counterterrorism, and they seem to be more on the side of Apple than they were on the side of the FBI in this case.
Really interesting is the idea now of who owns this crack. It was reported that Apple is now trying to get the FBI to reveal how they actually hacked into the phone.
Mm-hmm. So there's actually a law in place. It's called the Vulnerabilities Equities Process, under which the government is supposed to disclose this information to Apple about the flaws in their operating system. But I was just reading that, the government is not forced by law. Like they can choose to not do it, and they have certainly fought that before. So I wouldn't be surprised if the government fights this as well, just so that they could, sort of get back to Apple not giving in or whatever their grander plans are. And it also puts Apple in a tougher position to where, okay, now we need to go and figure out what exactly is wrong so that we can save face. Because we all along were touting that our encryption is pretty good.
Yeah, I think that the FBI is probably going to try and preserve it just so that if this exploit is repeatable, they can continue to do that going forward, rather than let Apple know how to block this exploit, into the future.
Yeah,
so.
and to that point, actually, Glenn. I read somewhere that the process that they've used to break into the San Bernardino iPhone is not scalable, and it requires a lot of resources. And they're definitely looking into this case by case. So they're not going to do it for all iPhones, just because it's pretty. I don't know if from a price tag or from a process or what, but it's pretty resource intensive and it's not scalable.
Are you talking about this chip replacement? I found something that the procedure that they might have used to exploit the phone actually mirrors the phone's storage chip, called a NAND chip, and then they copy it onto another chip, and this is called NAND mirroring, and this lets them replace the original NAND chip with one that has a copy of the content. So what that enables them to do is to try the 10 passcodes to unlock the phone. When those fail, they then generate a new copy, and then they can try again with the 10 the passcodes. So automating that process, I would assume.
Right, but from the sounds of it, it sounds pretty resource intensive, and not like if you were to do it for even 100 iPhones, it'd take a while.
Yeah. So good. It's interesting in hindsight. Do you guys think that this was a good move from Apple to refuse the FBI and maybe not to work with the FBI surreptitiously? Because now we have this exploit that may be out there. Let's assume it's not this NAND chip copying thing. We think it's in the hands of this Israeli company. We don't really know. And now it's sort of an unknown to Apple.
From Apple's point of view, I think this was sort of like a Pandora's box. Like, if they said yes now, then they'd had to give into every future request. And this is not just setting the precedence for Apple, but it also for other technology companies like that collect data about us. So Facebook, Google, Twitter, there would be pretty much like a milestone case that the FBI could go back to and say, hey, we were able to get it in this case. So now all technology companies should follow suit.
Yeah, I have this quotation from Kevin Bocek, VP of Security Strategy and Threat Intelligence at a company called Vanafi, who says that, quote, other people who stumble upon the same hacking technique could choose to sell to cyber thieves or other governments. An extensive underground online network concentrated in Eastern Europe does just that every day. So that's where I'm wondering how Apple is feeling right now, knowing that this exploit is out there and that they don't have any control over it at this point.
We're acting as if this is the first ever exploit into any operating system that Apple produces. I don't think so, right? There's lots of exploits out there. Like, we're able to jailbreak our phones. We're able to do a lot of things, side-loading apps and stuff like that. So to treat this as something out of the ordinary, it's just weird to me. I think every operating system has its flaws, and as Apple continues to evolve the operating system, they'll close more. Hopefully they'll open less. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think there are exploits out there even right now outside of just this one that this Israeli company has been able to figure out. I was listening to an NPR interview when this initially took place, where they were talking about how certain researchers from I think it was Johns Hopkins University were able to find the exploit in their iMessages, which basically were not sending the fully encrypted messages, and they talked to Apple about it and they were able to close it out. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities to think that there won't be other exploits in the future.
What kind of a time frame do you think Apple is looking for from the FBI? How do you think they're going to go about demanding? You think they're now going to have to file suit against the FBI in order to get this hack from them and so they can fix it?
I'm not familiar with the law that Nitin quoted earlier, but I would imagine that it's more of a filing of a request, kind of like a Freedom of Information Act style request, than it is to file suit for it. So I think it's a lower threshold, but I would imagine that they would pursue that alternative.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's a court order by any means.
In an article that I read by a guy named Mike Ash, he kind of talked about kind of the role of the secure enclave and how it may impact trying to use this NAND mirroring, if that's in fact the method that was used. It's a complete kind of another set of circumstances, and that the NAND mirroring would not actually work in the same manner because there's the UID that's in the secure enclave is tied to hardware. It kind of acts as the key to the encryption in a different manner than is on the 5C that's being used, and so therefore it doesn't appear that the NAND mirroring is going to work quite as well. So I think it's like a completely different ball of wax, and that's probably just one other method that and God knows what we're going to see in iOS 10 that's going to come out of WWDC this year, which I'm sure will have even more layers of stuff that was already planned on, let alone a reaction to what just happened. And on further to that, there's the whole issue of now with these newer devices, you don't have to have a simple PIN code, certainly not a 4-digit PIN. Once you get into alphanumeric and even longer PIN codes, the time that it would take, even if you were able to get rid of the delay that's imposed by the secure enclave, it's orders of magnitude increase in effort required to to find the right combination. A7 is what came out in the 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, now we're up to the A8, but the secure enclave was built into the A7 and forward. So when the A9 comes out, you're gonna see that there as well.
So now we'll be seeing all the criminals are going to be upgrading their phones.
Well, but this is a little bit of I think the false premise that's put out there that Apple is in between getting to the bad guys. Yes, there's encryption on a device level for within iOS, but even if you're to break that, there's all sorts of other secure and encrypted messaging applications that are available, even if you had a completely unencrypted device itself. So it's not like stopping or being able to break through to iOS all of a sudden means that all secure communications that criminals or terrorists or any other bad guys would use is now stopped. It's certainly that's really not the case, and it's just going to mean that people are going to move on to something else. If this is solved by the FBI in some magical way.
Smoke signals. Just take it old school.
Yeah.
This I think is interesting. I wasn't aware that Farouk was issued the iPhone by his employer, which was the county health department. I'm just wondering why there wasn't more, MDM software on the phone.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much MDM would help the FBI get what they wanted to get. I mean, what they could have forced is iCloud backups and not being able to turn that off. But from an encryption perspective, I don't think you can turn off encryption or unencrypt any of the data that sits on the iPhone.
Well, I mean, and even if they wanted to go crazy, they could have also not allowed iMessage as a method of communication, and made any kind of messaging go through some secure messaging platform that the department would have access to all of that data, because if all those messages had to go through a server that they had control over.
Yeah, it begs the question: would it be appropriate for enterprises who are issuing phones to their employees, or for state organizations that are issuing phones to implement some kind of additional backdoor into the phone that would be as secure as unlocking the phone by the owner, but would provide some kind of secondary access?
That's certainly a tough one, but there certainly you probably could do something to enforce daily backups, so that at least the information that is on the device could be retrieved up to a pretty short time frame. And then there are certainly companies that are highly regulated that kind of shut off all communication methods other than ones that they can get access to all of that data, because they need that for compliance and regulatory reasons. Like, that kind of stuff happens. It's why for a long time, BlackBerry was still in use, because you were able to capture all of the messaging that happens over BBM, on your servers, which you would need for compliance. There are ways to do that are not completely intrusive. It kind of comes to an issue which I've seen a number of times, that people have the potential for security on the device, but doesn't mean that a lot of companies are actually implementing all of that capability.
Yeah, so a lot of questions still remain around this, and it'll be interesting to see in the coming months what happens. The FBI, with Apple, with Cellebrite. And one thing we do know for sure, though, is that this will probably nullify Farouk's warranty. Okay. And that's my closer.
There's a long way to go until this story is done. I will say that if you were an investor in Cellebrite, or actually more correctly in Japan's Sun Corporation, which owns Cellebrite, their shares are up 40% since March 21st. So
Really?
probably did really well.
Of course, just remember that past, how does that phrase go?
Past performance is not indicative of future results.
There you go. Thank you. All right. Well, that's it. You've just listened to yet another episode of Device Squad, the enterprise mobility podcast from Propellix. Stay tuned for the next episode. And thank you, Nitin and Glenn, for hopping on such short notice.
Sure. Thanks, Steve.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.